Welcome to Learning Photography with Duck. Here's your host, Duck.
Alrighty. Welcome once again to another edition of Learn Photography with Duck. Once again, I am your host, Duck, and as you can see, we are doing Lightroom today. And I want to thank everybody for kind of indulging me in a little preview of a video that some friends of mine and I did recently. So anyway, before we get started, what I want to do is let's see. Where is my coming up? Let's see. Last week we did a photo walk over at O'Sullivan's Island. Small little turnout, but we had a great time, didn't we, Alan? We were there about a couple hours, just as the sun was starting to set, and it was nice. Like most photo walks, it's more about getting together and chit-chatting and building relationships more than it is about, trying to find a good photograph. But that's part of why I like photo walks. That being said, I want to let you know that this month's photo walk, hosted by the Connecticut Professional Photographers Association, is going to be on Wednesday, literally the last day of November. November 30th. And because the sun sets earlier and it gets darker earlier, what we're doing is we're bringing the photo walk starting at 1 o'clock. I know it's kind of an odd hour in the middle of the week for a lot of people, but if you're not doing anything on Wednesday around 1 o'clock, we're going to be exploring the Tidal Marsh Trail along the Quinnipiac River in North Haven. I've never been there. This will be something new for me, but apparently there's some pretty unique locations along that trail. If you're interested in looking it up, there's a bunch of stuff online about it. Apparently it's an old rail trail or something like that. I'm not 100% sure, but anyway, we're going to be there 1 o'clock until, people decide to leave. I posted the information on the Facebook page in the events section. So, feel free to check it out there. All right. So that's that for that. What I actually want to do today is kind of go over a few things that Adobe has added to Lightroom. Now, if you recall, several months back, they really expanded their masking utility and allows you to do a little bit more with masking, specifically using the artificial intelligence of masking within Lightroom, so that you can avoid having to go to Photoshop for some of these features that traditionally you would have gone into Photoshop for, because as you may understand, the earlier versions of Lightroom were just a very simplified overall editing. They're now starting to implement a little bit more advanced editing into it, and they're incorporating a lot of the artificial intelligence of photo editing into it, what Adobe calls their Adobe Sensei artificial intelligence. So anyways, what I wanted to do is just kind of touch base a little bit about what they've added and how you can use it. So let me switch over to the desktop here. And let's go to the develop module. Okay. And as you know, that they kind of reorganized this whole top section here. Oops, let me hold on one second. My cursor stuff is not active. There we go. Okay, here we go. Right up at the very top of the develop module, they've kind of simplified the UI and created these icons. And of course, the last one is the masking tool. So everything that falls under the masking tool has been brought into it here. And one of the things that they've expanded on is the subject selection tools. Okay, so previously, we had the sky selection tool. We went over this previously, where you can select the sky and manipulate the sky, or you can select the background. Now, and obviously you can select a subject, but they've refined this part of the select subject. Okay, oops. Let me break out of that. And one thing that you're going to notice is right below that, you're going to find a section called People. Now, previous versions of Lightroom has had the ability of having the software recognize people's faces, but it's been linked primarily to the database as far as tagging people within your photographs. And that's great if you do a lot of family photos, and you want to be able to find some of your family members and all the photos that your family members are in. Lightroom can go in and using their facial recognition AI, they'll find photos of grandma and grandpa, Uncle Joe and Aunt Harriet, and you can globally, tag all of these people, and makes finding them easier. What they're doing now is they're expanding on that AI capability of finding people, and they trained it not only to find the subject within a photograph, but they've broken it down where you can create masks on very specific parts of a person. All right. So in this case, I have just one person in here. This young lady's been a model that I've used in the past. And you can see if I hover over, all right, it recognizes her, and you can see her face here. And if I hover over it, you can see that there's an overlay, color overlay, that kind of visualizes where the mask is being applied. All right. And you can see that it does a fairly decent job of accurately selecting the subject. Okay. Once I click on it, I get a selection dialog. All right. And this is going to allow you to kind of refine how you want the mask to be created. By default, it's going to select the entire person, because normally that's, what we're going to do is we're going to, apply global I got to choose my words carefully here. It's going to apply a global modifications to a local mask. Okay, now the reason I say that is because the term global usually means the entire image, and a local adjustment usually refers to a section that is selected. But in this particular case, we can subdivide this particular mask into parts, okay? And if we look at it, we can see that there are very specific parts. The skin of the face, any skin that is exposed that is not the face, this will include arms and shoulders and things like that, depending on the photograph. And very specific parts like the eyebrows, the whites of the eye, called the eye sclera, iris and pupils, lips, and hair. All right, and as you can see, it does a fairly decent job of selecting each of these different parts. Now, like I said, the default is the entire person, and you can see that it is checked right here, okay? And then right below, there's a little checkbox. And as soon as you start checking these, you'll notice that the entire person is now unselected, okay? And you can check as many of these as you want. So for example, if you want to work just on the skin, you would select the facial skin and the body skin, and this will give you, she looks, poor Amanda, she looks funny with purple skin here. But it allows you to select all of the skin tones so you can apply changes to just the skin tone, okay? One of the things that I tend to do with portrait photos is I tend to isolate the irises and make them a little bit brighter, just to give them that little bit of color and vibrance punch in the portrait retouching. And I used to do that with the circular masks. In this case, I can have I can just go in and say the iris and the pupil, and it automatically selects that for me. So I can create a mask just specifically for that. Okay. All right. Now, if you do just the entire person, all right, and you say create mask, it's going to do just that. It's going to create a mask based on that overall selection. Where it becomes a little different is when you have multiple check boxes. Okay, like when you have multiple check boxes, okay, it gives you the option of creating just a single mask based on that. So everything that you see colored here in purple, that it will generate that one mask by clicking on the create mask. The other option you have is there's a selection here called create 4 separate masks. So it gives you the option of being able to create individual masks based on what you selected. Okay, so if I go ahead and check that, it's going to give me 4 separate masks, and then I can generate all the required masks. This is going to require a little bit of thought on your part, because depending on your workflow, you may not need 4 individual masks. So for example, normally, let's say I want to work on the skin, all right? If I select individual mask, what's going to happen is it's going to give me a mask for her face and a mask for, in this case, for her neck. All right, so that means if I want to work on her skin tone, I have to deal with two separate masks. All right, so it may be better to go in and say, all right, I'm just going to make a selection for the face skin and the body skin and generate one mask based on that selection, and then come back and create separate masks based on maybe the hair, and maybe I want to do something with the lips, or want to brighten up the eyes. Okay, so there's a little bit of a kind of workaround for that particular problem. And I find that that would be easier than trying to juggle multiple masks where you're trying to assign the same changes to multiple masks. And rather than trying to keep track of, all right, I changed it here, did I remember to change it on that mask as well? You just change it once because you created one mask for the two different parts. Hopefully that made sense. Okay, so once you've made your selection, all right, in this case, I'm going to unselect my create two separate masks, and I'm just going to say create mask. And you can see that it now created a mask for just her face. All right, so now I can go ahead and rename that to face. Okay. I can come back, create a new mask. All right, select people. All right, you'll notice that the select people has been added to this particular menu. It wasn't there before, it is now. Okay, when you select people, it's going to bring you back to that selection process. All right, so in this case, I'll go ahead and do one just for the iris and the pupils, and I'll go ahead and create a mask. And now I have one mask just for skin tone rather than two masks, one for the face and one for the neck area. All right, and one mask for the iris. All right, and I can rename that to iris.
Hey, Doug,
Yes.
when you have multiple masks, is that like an overlay of layers in Photoshop, the same type of idea?
Correct. Yes. Yes. So if this were the equivalent in Photoshop, you would have one adjustment layer with a face mask applied to it and one adjustment layer just for the eyes. All right. So in this case, you know, I'll go here and I have my iris enhance preset, which comes standard with Lightroom, and I can just go ahead and click on that. All right. And then if I turn it off, turn it on.
What did you click to get that iris enhance? What did you click?
Oh, sure. Right at the very top, okay, of the where it says effect, all right,
Okay.
you can just click on that, and almost towards the bottom, you have a bunch of presets that come preloaded with Lightroom, okay. Everything from soften skin to teeth whitening to right here where it says iris enhance. Okay, and you can see that it just pumps up the exposure just a little bit, and it pumps up the clarity just a little bit, and the saturation quite a bit. So basically what it's doing is it's adding clarity. All right, so that's local contrast. It's also adding saturation to any color that's already existing there, and it's brightening it up. Okay, so if we turn it off and on, let me see if I can go ahead and zoom in. All right, that's without, and that's with, without, without, without. So it's very subtle. All right, and of course you can make it as as bright as you want. Obviously, you don't want her eyes to look like, you know, they're some kind of alien or, you know, movie monster creature. Okay. So usually a slight little brightening is all that's needed for um, for a portrait. Okay. And then the face, you can do the same thing. All right. Now here you'll notice that even though there's one overall mask, it's taken both masks, one for the body and one for the face, because that's auto-generated by the AI, and put it under that one, basically combined it into that one mask, okay? You cannot work on these individually, all right? If you need to work on them individually, you'll need to generate a new mask, all right? This is just how the AI generates this particular mask here, by combining those two auto-generated sections, okay? All right, and then of course here we can go right up here where it says custom, all right, where it says effect custom, okay? Click on that, go down, and we have two presets, soften skin light and soften skin. And what that does, it just gives you a little bit of skin softening. Let me see if I can zoom in here. She pretty much doesn't need it. Okay, you can see this is pretty rough. I mean, not rough, pretty extreme. All right, so without, with, without, with. All right, so even without, you can see she. Gotta love technology, right? And as usual, something always goes wrong with my friggin' stream. We're back. Everybody seem okay?
Yep.
Okay, awesome.
How would you feather with this new way of masking?
Unfortunately, the masking capabilities within Lightroom are very, very limited still. You don't have the flexibility like you do in Photoshop, where you can open up the mask and work directly on the mask. If you want to do anything with the mask in Lightroom, let's say, for example, this mask here. If you needed to add something or take away from something, you would have to, in the best example I can give you is, you have to create another mask that interacts with the current mask. All right, so for example, if I wanted to add something to the hair mask, I would just click on the add. Usually I would pick the brush tool because that gives you probably the best control. Okay. And then within this, you have the, you know, obviously the brush tool, where you can control the size and the feather of the brush, okay, as well as the flow and density, you know, how much, how dense or how opaque the mask is going to be as you're applying it, okay. And then you would just come to the image and you would say, okay, I'm going to add this section to that hair mask, all right? So you can see up here how it's added that whole part that I just painted in. It's added it to the mask, all right? but you'll see that it added it as a separate entity. All right.
Okay.
So I guess in one way that's good, because you can always come back and say, okay, you know what? Now that I've done it, I realize I don't like it. You can go here and you can delete just that part without completely destroying everything you had previously. Whereas in Lightroom, if I were to, in Photoshop, had I done that, by painting on the mask in Photoshop without pre-thinking about, being able to step it back, I won't be able to do it as easily. Okay. So if you needed to soften something, or even sharpening something, all right. So like, for example, if we look here around the ear, you can see that it kind of spills out onto her cheek. Okay. Let me go here and let's go to maybe 50%. Okay, there we go. That's even better. Okay. If I wanted to clean this up, for example, I would have to generate a new mask using the subtract method. Again, I would probably choose my brush. Okay. I would reduce the feather. Okay. And then I could go ahead and clean this section up here. All right. And as you can see, what I'm doing is I am taking away from the mask that's already there, but it's saving it as a separate entity. So what it's doing is saying, okay, everything that I just painted here, excuse me, ugh. Everything that I just painted here, I want you to take that and subtract it from the existing mask. All right, so it's subtracting all of what I just painted from the hair mask. Okay, so that's one way of being able to control the edge of your mask. All right, but here's the thing. If we look at the selection here, okay, especially up on the crown of her head, you can see that it did a rather poor job at selecting the individual strands. But most of the changes, most of the edits that we're going to do within Lightroom are not what I would consider, technically advanced changes. Most of the edits are going to be, adding a little bit of contrast, adding a little bit of, brightening. You're not going to be doing any kind of color shifting. You're not going to be doing any kind of cleanup, okay, on the hair within Lightroom, because it's not the tool for that part. So even though this is not what we would consider a perfect mask, it is suitable for the majority of the edits that you're going to be doing within Lightroom, okay? So for example, for the hair, maybe what I want to do is I want to just add a little bit of punch in the highlights. So I bring the highlights up, okay? You can see I'm brightening it up quite a bit, okay? Does that require a perfect mask that selects every single loose strand of hair coming off her head? No, not really. And the change that I actually made in around the ear, where I subtracted I cleaned up part of the mask in the shadow area, is it affecting that? Not at all, because in this particular case, I just targeted the highlights. Okay, so everything that I just did in the shadows is not even affected. So I literally right here did work on something that has no effect on my change, on my edit. Okay, so I can even delete that. Okay, so I'm going to delete that. All right, but let's say, okay, well, that's because you targeted the highlights. What if you were targeting the shadows? All right, so let's do that. Let me return highlights to 0. All right, and let's open up the shadows a little bit. Okay. Even though it's spilling onto a little bit of her cheek, let me zoom in here. All right, is that noticeable? All right, kind of a little bit if we do this, flip back and forth between, the effect and without the effect. But in reality, does it alter the image so much that you say, ooh, I don't want it to affect that part of her cheek? Not at all. As a matter of fact, I kind of like that it opens up a little bit of the shadows on her ear as well, because it makes it look a little bit more natural. Okay, so this goes into one of the warnings that I often fail to kind of stress out through some of these lessons, that I think it's now a good time to really point it out. Don't get lost in the minutia of your edits, because the minute you start doing that, you start losing vision of the overall goal of your edits. Okay, when you start worrying about the little tiny details, usually those tiny little details don't have that high of an impact on the overall edit. All that's going to do is add more time and more work to your edit that the majority of people looking at your images are not going to appreciate anyway, because they're not going to notice it. All right. Even major edits, they're not going to notice it. All right, because there's nothing for them to compare against as what the image used to look like. Okay, so now let me give you an example. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off these. All right, I'm turning off all the masks that I just created, and I'm going back. Okay, here's the image that I pulled up as an example for editing today. Is this straight out of camera, or has this been edited? Can you tell just by looking at it? Probably not. Okay. If I were to tell you that it's been edited, then you can say, okay, well, maybe I can see some of that. All right. All right. There's a little bit of contrast in her face. Okay. Maybe you can also go into your knowledge base as a photographer yourself and say, okay, now that he mentions it, yeah, usually when I take a photograph of a person, the eyes aren't that bright. I have to go in. So I can see, yeah, he probably brightened the eyes up a little bit. Okay. But somebody who's just coming in looking at the photograph, they're going to say, oh, she's pretty. Nice picture. You're a good photographer. All right. They're not going to notice that you edit it. All right. So don't get lost in the the little minutiae of, how perfect is my mask. Okay. Especially if it really doesn't matter. All right. Now, I know I'm probably sounding a little bit aloof about this right now. And you have to understand that there will be times in certain images where precision is required. Okay? And you'll know that when you're editing those types of images. So I'm not saying that there isn't a time and a place for it. But what I do want to stress is don't get lost in the minor details if it doesn't really matter. All right? Because that's just going to take up your time and energy and resources. And, you know, who cares? All right? All right. Any questions about all these things, all these new features that Lightroom added to your portrait photography aspects of masking? Any questions on this?
Doug, I'm trying to follow along with my laptop, and apparently, I guess the mobile unit is not the same as yeah. I'm finding out half the stuff that you're talking about is not on my laptop. Just saying, but
Yeah.
there are some new features on it, but
Gloria can attest to this. We had a discussion about this at her place. I am using the desktop version. The desktop version is going to give you all the bells and whistles. Okay. The mobile version is going to give you a little bit of a stripped down version simply because it needs to be a lighter weight program in order to operate properly on machines that have less of a capability, such as small frame laptops and tablets. Okay. Those particular machines are, don't have the computing power. All right. But it will allow you to do a certain amount of editing, but you are going to be restricted. Okay. And again, it's like, what is the end use for the photograph? Okay. If the end use is casual sharing and what the mobile product can give you is good enough, then by all means, go ahead and use it. However, if you as an artist, as the image producer say, you know what? This particular program is limiting my ability to generate the quality that I want to, go ahead and switch over to the full Lightroom Classic. Okay.
yeah.
Myself, that's why as I teach these, I'm teaching it using Lightroom Classic for a couple of reasons. One, I don't want to be bothered with learning a lesser version of a program. It does not appeal to me creatively, artistically, and technically. All right. My work is beyond that level. Okay. I don't want to limit the quality that I give to my clients because I am limited by the software. All right. I will seek out the better software in order to give a higher level of quality to my clients. Now, I understand a lot of you don't have clients. A lot of you are doing this for yourselves. All right. So you need to judge, what level of quality you are satisfied with and choose the software that's appropriate to that quality. All right. The second reason I do this is for educational purposes. Okay. Even though the mobile versions and even the web-based versions have a lot of features that are missing. Okay. The features that are the same, if you learn it here, you can apply it to those programs just as easily. All right. Now, the other aspect is I want you to not just take away the lessons about the specific tools, but I'm hoping that you also take away the underlying foundation of editing. All right. So you can say, well, he did this, this, and this. And here, the program that I'm currently using doesn't have those tools, but I like the results. How can I get the same results using the tools that are available to me here? All right, so hopefully it'll challenge you to find alternative methods. And typically there are alternative methods of doing the same things, okay? But in the end, if you say, you know what? I like the results he got. I saw how he did it. I'm seeing the limitations here, all right? Hopefully that will then say, I am being limited as an artist by this software. Maybe it's time for me to upgrade so that I can express myself a little bit better. Okay. So anyway, hopefully that explains it.
Well, it does. It explains it perfectly. And, using the laptop I was just trying to follow along, but now I realize it's not going to work.
Yeah. So, I think I mentioned I just bought myself an iPad, and I bought myself an iPad not because I want to use Lightroom mobile. I don't. I bought it for practical purposes. As a lot of you know, I recently, earlier in the year, I upgraded my computer system here at work, and I bought myself an upgraded version of a laptop for home. That laptop, my old laptop, is the one that I used to take when I did remote jobs, and Brian will attest to this. I would set up my laptop in order to shoot tethered. The problem is that setting up a laptop on location shooting tethering is clunky at most. So I decided I'm going to lighten my load, get rid of dragging a laptop, and connect to a tablet. And now that I shoot remotely, I'm going to be tethering to the tablet. Okay. But I want to have certain features that are available within Lightroom, and such as being able to select and tag and flag images. All right. And the lightweight version of Lightroom is going to allow me to that, but I am walking into this understanding that the final editing is not going to be done on the tablet. It's going to be done when I'm back in the studio with my PC. Okay. So there is a time where, the lighter weight software is useful. I just understand the limitations to that, and, will incorporate it into my workflow accordingly. Okay. And you'll just have to judge and do the same adjustments yourself within your workflow and your routine. Some of you, will say, well, you know what? I don't have a full-fledged PC. All right. Well, at that point, you can ask yourself, will your laptop support the Lightroom Classic? All right. And at that point, you may have to eject the Lightroom mobile part. Okay. In order to, rather than run two programs on one machine, you just eject one and bring in the full version. Okay. But it's hard to tell, because everybody's machines are different and everybody's needs are different. So, right? All right. Any questions on the update on the masking tools? No? Okay.
I have an observation.
Sure.
An observation on what you were just saying there, Doug. I got to playing around with the things you were talking about tonight, and I was really impressed with them. And what I've been doing also is playing around with the Lightroom on my phone when I'm with my phone. And what I find is that, yeah, I like Lightroom Classic better, but the more I learn about Lightroom Classic, it makes it easier to use the Lightroom when I'm on my phone. And last week, I think it was maybe it was 2 weeks ago, I sat in on a Zoom from the North Haven Camera Club.
Mm-hmm.
They let me sit in, and this woman was doing a thing on taking flower photos, and she's specializing with her iPhone. And she was really big on
Snapseed.
Snapseed, yeah.
Snapseed,
Yeah.
which is, really a neat tool. But what I've been using it for a number of years, but what I'm finding now is the more I find I can do something in Lightroom, then I can do it better than the Snapseed thing. So it's again, and what I found too is that, like you were just saying about how much you can work on something with these new tools. I spent some time working on some vacation photos that I otherwise would not have. And
Mm-hmm.
so anyway, I just thought it's good I like them both, but I really like the learning on the more powerful tool, if you will.
Yeah, well, when you start using other tools out there, and I know some of you will use not only Lightroom, but some of the other programs that plug into Lightroom. Okay, but things like Snapseed and I don't know a lot of these programs, so it's not like I can rattle their names off. But what I find is a lot of these programs that are mobile friendly, not only are they going to be lightweight, but you have to understand that a lot of those programs are not designed with a professional photographer in mind. They are they're targeted for the non-photographer to make their photos look a little bit better. Okay. And often this means lots of presets, lots of filters, and lots of stuff that if you were to apply them and put your images into competition, they would probably laugh you out of the room, simply because they're very easy to spot. All right. And there's really no artistry involved. All right. And part of, photographic competitions is pushing your artistic level forward. All right. Not substituting it with filters and plugins and stuff like that. Okay. So yeah, some of those programs are fun to play with. But in the end, after a while, it becomes kind of boring. It becomes, repetitive, all right? And your images start looking like everybody else's, all right? And that's one of the things that I try to avoid. Now, there are such things as trends in the photographic community, okay? And a lot of these trends tend to be motivated by what is readily available to the general public. All right. So if you remember a while back, the Instagram filters were trending. And what I noticed in commercial photography, this is companies paying big bucks for professional photographers to take photos of their products and services. These professional photographers were, what's the best description? They were Instagram-fying, I guess. They were making their professional photos look cheaper on purpose because that was the trend. And it was a weird trend that I couldn't wrap my head around. But this is what was being requested because they wanted their professional photos to kind of fit in with the crowd and appeal to the general public. So, it's one of those things you have to watch. However, that's in the commercial photography industry. And the lifespan of a commercial photo is very short, ridiculously short. All right. Sometimes just a couple of weeks and then poof, they're gone. All right. But a lot of you are not in commercial photography. A lot of you are into, fine art photography. All right. And fine art photography needs to span multiple years and needs to have an appeal across time. So what I like to tell people is pay attention to more of a classic style of editing rather than the cliches and the trends, because that's going to make your photos last longer rather than looking at it and go, oh my God, that photo is so outdated now. And I took that image last year.
Doug, it's what's funny what you said about trends back in the old mid-Connecticut photography days with me and the two Sues. The big trend was HDR and really pushing it to look like a non-photo.
Oh my God, yes. Yes. The overbaked HDR.
Yes.
Oh my God, I remember that. That. It's funny because when it first started coming out, it was like, oh my God, that's cool, because it was new, it was fresh, and then all of a sudden everybody was doing it, and after a while it's like, ugh. It's
the call that Brian was on, I was on that same call too, and Jan, she's in the New Haven group, I forget her name, Jan. Anyways, she talked about using the cell phone. She talked about using the cell phone, and she mentioned that you have your software that comes with the cell phone itself, and then you have Snapseed. I find that it's quick for cell phone photography. It's quick and dirty, and it's quicker, and it's more accurate for me to use the software that comes with the phone.
Yeah.
Because when I'm taking cell phone pictures, it's of people in the woods. The lighting isn't going to be the best in the first place. It's going to be something wrong.
Right.
And also, if I use Snapseed, it's like it's going to look like a phony thing instead of hey, this is what we did in the woods.
Yeah. No, absolutely. There is a time and a place for everything. All right. And just kind of piggybacking a little bit on what you said, when you think about the workflow for image editing, I tend to break it down into two parts. Okay. The first part is what I call normalizing an image. All right. And the normalizing part of the image is correcting certain very obvious flaws, such as, correcting for your horizon. If your camera's a little bit, tilted, maybe correcting your composition by, cropping in a little bit tighter, doing kind of exposure balancing. All right, because we know that, our cameras are only so good about capturing exposure. It tends to add a lot more contrast than we actually see. So we tend to correct for, blown out highlights and deep shadows. Okay. And maybe even color correcting to a certain degree. You know, if our the camera tends to, you know, be a little bit overly warm on colors, and sometimes a little bit on the dull side when it comes to how it shows colors. So those are all things that no matter what camera takes, it's going to need to be done in order to make your image look presentable. Okay. And this is one of the reasons why I say every single image needs to be processed. All right. If for nothing else, just those very basic, you know, housekeeping, normalizing steps. Okay. Once that's done, and just about any, you know, photo software out there can do those, you know, very basic steps. Beyond that is what I call your artistic interpretation. All right, is how do you visualize the finished product from that raw image? Okay, whether it's, you know, changing the color mood, reassessing how the light hits in certain places by using local adjustments. Okay, those are all artistic tasks. All right, and depending on your vision, you're going to select the tool that best accomplishes that vision. Okay, now obviously programs like Photoshop have, you know, hundreds of tools. The majority of them, you know, you probably never even touch because you don't need, but they are available simply because that piece of software is designed for a wide range of users, everything from illustrators to photographers, okay? And everything from the casual shooter to the more technical shooter, all right? So it needs to have a tool that addresses everybody's needs. Okay, a program like Snapseed, like I mentioned earlier, isn't designed for more advanced users. All right, so it's not going to have all the nice bells and whistles that something like Photoshop would have, but it's going to have what they feel the average John Doe, and Jane Doe would need to make their images look pretty. All right. And usually they're going to be shortcut because a lot of the people that use it are not technically adept at using image manipulation tools. Right, so a lot of them are going to be designed with one click of a button will do a lot of different stuff behind the scenes to make your image look better. Okay. But ultimately, it's going to be dependent on what your final vision for that image is. So, but anyway, good discussion. All right. Any questions? I can't remember if I got an answer. Any questions on any of the masking tools? All right. The other major thing that Lightroom did this time around is they added a bunch of new cameras to their database. So a lot of the new mirrorless cameras are now able to shoot tethered. And I think that was pretty much it for this update on Lightroom. Okay.
Saying I'm not buying any more hardware.
So yeah, you don't need to buy new hardware.
At this point of the game, I'm happy with what I have.
That's it.
Especially being on a fixed income. So.
Yeah, tell me about it. All right. So any questions about Lightroom in general that, you know, people are having problems with? Not necessarily anything that we talked about earlier.
One question that came up when Brian and I went to that North Haven Camera Club thing. I seem to remember you saying that if you subscribe to the paid monthly version or yearly version of Photoshop and Lightroom, you also get the cell phone for free. Is that
The
true?
mobile
Did you
version,
say that?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
If you open up your Creative Cloud, the Adobe Creative Cloud app portion, it lists everything that comes with your program or with your what you call it, subscription. That's
Okay.
the
Because that was the one question that came up where somebody said, "Well, can't I do this in Lightroom?" Because some of these people who were on the call do very creative stuff, and they use Lightroom and other tools.
yeah.
And it was sort of like one person was like, "Well, if I can do this, why do I need Snapseed?"
Yeah. Again, it depends on what level of photography you're at and what you want the end results to be. You know,
We're talking about power users. We're not talking about
yeah,
average people.
yeah. A power user, you know, after a while, Snapseed is going to become a toy.
Right.
You know, you're going to look. The development of a photographer, all right, going from the beginner to the advanced photographer, what I find is there, even though you're looking at everybody else's photography, you're not competing against other photographers. You're always going to be competing against yourself. All right. That's how you progress as a photographer. You're going to look at the work you're doing now, say, okay, what am I dissatisfied with and how can I make that better? So you're always going to be competing against yourself. All right. So hopefully you're looking at your work with a critical eye and saying, okay, I'm looking at the work I'm doing now, and the only thing you can compare against is the work that you've done in the past. All right. So there's a measure right there for you of how you are progressing. Okay. How to measure to your future, you can't do it internally. So it's not like you have a time machine that you can pull an image from your future and compare where you're going to where you are now. All right. All you can do is compare against what you hope to achieve through examples of somebody else's work. I would like to do work similar to this particular photographer, or I wish my landscapes look like this particular photographer. Okay, so that's the only measure you have about moving forward. Okay, so as you progress, you're gonna hopefully you'll be able to identify, all right, what are the steps that I need to get from here to where I want to be, all right, and you start analyzing the images that you look up to. You start analyzing it with a more critical eye, and you say, okay, what is the difference between that image and my image? Okay. Once you start seeing those differences, then it starts becoming, okay, what are the tools that allows me to take my image to that level? Whether it's manipulating the exposure in a certain way, punching colors in a certain way, changing my perspective of composition in a certain way, whatever it is, okay? You can then say, all right, that's where I need to be. This is where I'm at now. These are the tools that I'm using. Are the tools that I'm using capable of giving me that result? Right? And oftentimes, when you've pushed to the extreme of some of the more basic tools, it becomes easy to say, oh yeah, no, Snapseed will never get me to that level. All right. And that you'll find becomes a very easy decision to make based on your current observations of your current level of performance. All right, because you can see it. All right, and you have something to compare against. All right, and so it makes it easy at that point to say, you know what, I got to get rid of Snapseed because it's holding me back from what I need to really do with my images. All right, but had you traveled back in time, 5, 6, 7 years prior, okay, Snapseed would have taken you to that next level up, because you used to be at a position where you knew you wanted to do something better, but you didn't know how to get there or what tools got you there in this big complex machine called Photoshop. But you knew that the simpler machines of Snapseed and the Instagram filters got you that step up. All right, so that's part of that natural progression of your learning. All right, there was a place for those pieces of software in your understanding of the photographic development, because it got you to a higher level back then. But hopefully you're now at the point where you say, okay, those programs are now holding me back from taking it to the next level. All right, and then you just got to get rid of them and move up. That's it. All right, so but anyway, this is Adobe CC, your Creative Cloud. All right, and it gives you what's installed. All right, but if you look below it, you're going to see what is available in your plan. All right, and of course, Lightroom Classic is the full desktop. Lightroom, all right, is the more streamlined version of it. Okay, and of course, Photoshop Express is kind of like the streamlined mobile version of the desktop program. Okay.
Go back to Lightroom. The middle thing is for the phone, in the middle icon.
Oh, here.
Yeah, right there. Yeah.
This lets you know that it's designed for those platforms. Okay.
Okay. Mm-hmm. What's the first? Icon? That's desktop.
All right, that's desktop, smartphone, and tablet.
Okay, thanks.
Oh no, I'm sorry, web. There it is. You hover it.
Oh.
All right.
Okay.
So mobile devices, smartphones, tablets. All right, and the web version. Okay. So.
I'm going to post that info on the North Haven Cable.
Yeah, and then of course you can click on to learn more. It'll give you the details. All right. But like I said, you have to weigh, against yourself which tool is best for you. Okay. I tend to be of the mentality. See, my progress as a photographer may be a little bit different than others. All right. I knew way back when that my photographic path was going to lead me to commercial photography, simply because that's the world I grew up in. I was a commercial graphic designer. I operated in the world of commercial photography on the design end. All right. So the photography aspect, the commercial photography aspect is what appealed to me way back when. So when I started exploring photography or digital photography a little bit more fervently, all right, I knew it was with an understanding that the appeal for me was commercial photography. And that requires a certain level of performance. So I knew right from the get-go, based on my experience as a commercial graphic designer, that the tools needed to be a commercial photographer needed to be higher than the average Joe Schmo program. All right. I was already using professional tools in my graphic design. So I was already used to that platform. So when I transitioned over to photography, it was very easy for me to make the decision to start off with Photoshop and Lightroom, because I knew those were the tools that I needed to be at the level of. All right. So I walked in with that understanding, and I started off at that level, learning at that higher level. The general public doesn't have that pressure. All right. A lot of people come in, say, I just want to take pictures. All right. I don't want to take boring pictures or blah pictures or generic pictures. I want pictures that, are going to appeal to me, artistically. All right. So that's why you choose a better camera than like a point and shoot. That's why you have your DSLRs and your full frame mirrorless and your interchangeable lenses. Okay? Because you knew going in that you wanted your photography level to be at a higher level than normal. Okay? But what I see is a lot of people come off the, with the idea, it's like, whatever comes out from these high level cameras, that's going to be really, really better than the lower level cameras. And then reality sets in and says, ooh, they're not as good as I thought. So now you start doubting yourself. Okay, is it my ability behind a camera? And usually it's not. Well, I'm being generous here. Usually it's not. Usually it's a combination of several things. And one of them is the fact that, back in the film days, you were used to, sending your roll of film out and getting your prints back already processed for you. All right. So some technician somewhere along that flow, workflow, did the color correcting, did the contrast correcting, and printed out your images, with editing already applied to it. So because you did not see that part of it, a lot of people came into digital thinking, oh, I can now skip the whole sending my roll of film out. Here's the finished print right here on the LCD on the back of my camera. When in reality, that's not what was happening. You still needed to develop these images. All right. So now that whole hidden world that was not available to us as a general snap shooter back in the film days, now we have to actually do it. All right. So we start looking for the software. All right. And of course, because we don't have the language or the understanding of the more advanced tools, we start off with something simple. All right. Now, I'm going back a few ways. And of course, technology was very simplistic back then. Okay. Fast forward, now phones are ubiquitous and, they're available here, but we still have that same problem where people want something a little bit better than just what comes out of the camera. So the solution are the simple apps. And those simple apps are designed for the simple photographer. You guys are not simple photographers. Okay? So that's where, the more advanced tools come into play. Right? But the difference between, the advanced amateur and somebody who went in like me that went into it, professionally, is those steps of the progress. I skipped the early steps. You guys went through the early steps. Okay. And now you're at a point where you say, oh, wow, those early steps, I am so well past it. I got to get out of that habit of that way of thinking that those earlier programs trained you on. All right. And now you're having to retrain yourself using more advanced tools. All right. And that's why you're here. So I don't know if that explains some of the process and clarifies some things for you, but that's kind of how I perceive it. Let me know if I'm wrong. Okay.
I was gonna say, Doc, I think maybe I misspoke on what you thought I was saying. I will go to what Bill says, this is pretty much talking about when we're working on a phone, and in the past, I found this thing called Snapseed. And then about 2 years ago, I got Lightroom, and I'm here to tell you, 2 years ago, Lightroom on a phone was a POS.
Yeah.
It was more trouble than it was worth. But I started playing with it about 4 months ago when I am working on my phone, and it's really improved a lot. And for me, what I was saying was that I really like learning everything I've learned on Lightroom Classic because it's a better, easier platform to learn it on. And when you see a similar tool in something like Lightroom on the phone, it's nice. And I was trying to be kind because that wasn't my presentation, but I was trying to let the folks know that once you try Lightroom,
oh yeah.
Snapseed if you're working on a phone. That's all I was really trying to say about that.
Yeah.
Because I found now that what I do is if I have something on my phone, I'll play with it a little bit, and I can say, oh, this is worth going on, and then I'll get it out to the computer if I want to, or hey, this worked out for what I need, and then I'm on to the next one. So
yeah. Now, what was the goal of the presentation? Just, to introduce phone photography to people, or?
Yes, to introduce phone photography to people. She didn't do a lot of editing lessons. Her thing was, got my notes here. It was mainly, it was basically a class that she gave to a photographer, to a flower group, a gardening club. And she talked about center of interest, the idea of having your photos sharp, in focus, no clutter, having leading lines, angle of view, that the type of thing you would teach to a beginner, especially in a flower group, in a gardening group.
Yeah. So you have to, so you have to understand what the purpose of the class and who the target audience is. I'm going to be doing a workshop for some school-age kids in the next upcoming weeks. And I'm going to be introducing them to photography. And as a commercial photographer, I can talk about the pros of getting into a professional system and using, studio lights and interchangeable lens cameras and, high-end software. But that's not the target audience. The target audience are a bunch of teenagers who have these in their pockets. All right. So I'm going to make sure that as that my class is geared around this. All right. So I'm not going to be talking about, high-end editing software. As a matter of fact, I'm probably not even going to get into editing software with this introductory class. But anybody who is an advanced photographer sitting in on a lesson like that, like you were, all these things are going to be running through your head that, you could do this. If you were more advanced, you could do this. All right. If you really want to advance, you need to do this. Okay. But yeah, I'm glad you kind of held your tongue, because that's not the target. All right.
It really wasn't the target.
Yeah.
The people who were not happy with this presentation were the power users, people who do tremendous stuff. And when Brian had said Lightroom, a couple of people went, "Wow, can you do that?" And the person who gave the presentation said, "Gee, I never knew that. I got to look into it." But Doug, what I did is I did a print screenshot. I'll give you credit for it. I did a print screenshot, and I'm putting a 1, 2, and a 3 underneath the desktop, mobile, and web. And I'm going to put this out on the web page, saying, "Hey, seeing this came up in a conversation. Yes, if you have subscribed to Lightroom, to Creative Cloud, yes, you can put this on your cell phone and use it."
Yeah. Yeah, that's all you can do is, if somebody feels a little restricted, they'll voice it. You'll know who they are. And that's a great way of opening up conversation to, more advanced stuff. But yeah, there are times where you just gotta kind of grin and bear it. As an educator, as somebody who's done a ton of workshops, it's tough to balance out at what level you want to do your presentation at. Okay. I can go into the power user level of, Photoshop and Lightroom. And, somebody who's not at that level, they're going to get left behind. Okay. So for me, it becomes a little bit of a juggling act, and it may have been the same with this, other presenter. It's like, all right, I don't want to go too advanced that leaves the beginners below, but I also don't want to make it too basic that it leaves the more advanced photographers going, "Oh man, I just wasted my time," But what I find is, on occasion, I like watching some of the more basic videos, like on YouTube, for a couple of reasons. One, sometimes I'll pick up that one little nugget that, I knew about it, but it immediately went to the back of my brain and just kind of resided there, way back there. And, watching that beginner class just kind of resurfaces it. And it's like, oh, wow, I forgot about that. That makes perfect sense. I need to put it back into my everyday routine, So I find that, watching some of the basic stuff will bring that up. The other reason I'll watch basic, intro stuff is, how are they presenting the information? Are they presenting it in a clearer way than I have been doing it? So I kind of use it as kind of like a teaching tool for myself as well. But yeah, I can see where you can sit in on a workshop that is, below, either at or below the level of proficiency that you're at, and you're just sitting there going, "Oh man, there are so much better, easier, faster methods of doing what she just did." And it can be frustrating as an attendee, but in the end, it is their presentation, and they are targeting a certain demographic, and you just got to kind of grin and bear it, But in a club situation like you're in, all right, you have the added benefit of being a mentor to some of those people, because you can now open up the conversation to some of the people that and says, okay, you know, because I'm sure you know a lot of them personally, and you've seen their work and what level they're at, and you can say, hey, you know, here is me coming to you in the form of a mentor. I know the level you're at. I'm going to guide you gently into a higher position by recommending this to you. All right. Based on the understanding that they just went through that training, and you can recognize within them that, hey, you know, if they're just given the right nudge, they can go beyond that. So it's a beautiful position for you to be in as a club member, and because it puts you in a position of leadership at this point. And it's a great feeling that when you can help somebody out in that position. So write it for all it's worth, you know. And that's where your knowledge of the more advanced techniques come into play, because it puts you in a position where you can mentor these upcoming photographers. So awesome. All right, went off on a little bit of a tangent there, but
Let me go off just for 60 more seconds
Yeah.
on the tangent. You mentioned new kids learning photography.
yeah.
My first camera, I bought it when I was 14 years old, so that's 55 years ago. It was a Rolleicord. You know, the low budget model of the Rolleiflex.
Okay.
I saw a refurbished one for sale out on the internet, $3,900.
Oh man! Wow!
Refurbished like new.
Oh my God! Yeah, that's a medium format, right? Or
Well, it's the big
That was
square,
two-
big
two by-
square negative.
yeah, 2x2s.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Wow. Wow. Hey, you never know where the market goes, you know.
Yeah.
My
That one down at Milford Photo up on the top shelf.
yeah. My first camera was the Pentax K1000. Very simple 35 millimeter camera. Then I moved into the AE1 program. The AE1 program goes for about $30 nowadays. Nobody wants them. Shoot. Yeah. So yeah, I don't, you know, I've revisited film on a couple occasions, and you know, I got a little misty eyed with nostalgia, you know, and then the reality of all the chemicals and all the work just came flooded back very, very quickly. And I said to myself, why am I doing this? The nostalgia is not worth it for me. You know, it really wasn't. So I ended up having a dark room full of chemicals that I putzed around with. You know, like I said, got that misty eye, and then it just went to waste. It just, yeah. You know, film has its appeal, but not strong enough for me to get back into it full-fledged. So. All right. Any questions on anything Lightroom? No? Any?
How do you save? In what format you save your work?
Okay. So in Lightroom, let me go here. In Lightroom, you do not save. All right. Everything is automatically saved. So if I make a change, okay. All right. So in this case, I turned her completely blue. Okay. And I go on to, you know, editing something else. And then later on, I said, okay, I'm going to come back and work on that image. I come back, and everything that I did is still there. All right, so you can say it automatically saves. Every step that you make is automatically saved. All right. However, you're not going to see these changes until you actually export. All right. So if I were to, all right, in this case, I'm working on a TIFF file, but let's say I was working on the raw file. All right. If I were to go back and pull that raw file and send that raw file to somebody else, all the changes that I made are not going to travel with that raw file. All right, so all the changes are being saved within Lightroom itself, within the catalog. Okay. If I want to share an image with whatever edits I made, I need to create a new file. All right, so in this case, I need to generate an export file that is easily readable by whoever I'm sending it to. And it's typically going to be on the internet. So it's going to be normally a JPEG file. All right, that's the most common format for internet use. Okay, it also happens to be a popular format for printing. Okay, you just need to make sure that you export a high resolution for print and a low resolution for sharing it on the internet. Okay. So let's say I wanted to share this particular image with people on the internet. I would go to, let's see, where's File, Export. Okay. And then here, I would have to specify all the different aspects that I want for this particular image. So for example, where do I want to export it to? Okay, because Lightroom just maintains a database that points to your raw file. All right, so it doesn't like take the actual image file and pull it into itself. All right, it just creates a pointer that says, okay, this file of this model is located here on my hard drive. All right. What it does do is it creates a little text file that says, all right, these are all the changes. All right. So if you're making edits, these are all the changes that Gloria did to this raw file. Okay. So now when you're ready to share it, it says I'm going to take the raw image. I'm going to apply all these changes that Gloria wants to it. And I'm going to generate a new file. All right. And the new file is going to be generated based on certain criteria that you need to tell Lightroom about. Okay. So we do that through the export function. All right. So where are we going to export to? Okay. And I usually tell people, you know, exports should be done based on the end needs. All right. So for example, let's say in this case, you want to share it on the internet, on Facebook. You want to put it on Facebook. Well, Facebook has certain criteria. They can't be too big. They can't be too small. Okay. So I'll put it into an export file that's separate from all my images. Okay. Because I don't want this export mixed in with all my raws. I want the two separate, and I want them separate on purpose. Okay. Because one, every time I generate a new image, it's creating a new file, which is taking up memory on my system. Okay. Once I take that export and put it on the internet on Facebook, all right, and people are now looking at it on Facebook, do I need it on my laptop or on my tablet or on my computer? No. So I can delete it. All right. So I want to make sure that I'm able to find it and delete it without having to go searching through all my images. All right. So I'll put it in a very specific export folder. Okay. So that's the first thing. All right. Export to a specific folder. Right. It'll ask you, do you want to rename it? Okay. Usually I will rename it. I will put my name on the file name so that when it goes out there, my name's attached to it. Okay. This is a video, so we'll skip down. File settings. All right. And this is where we start getting into the specifics about how you want the end results. All right. In this case, we want it to be a JPEG. All right. Because it's going on the internet, I don't need it at 100%. All right. We can give it a lower resolution, I guess you can say. All right. Or lower image quality. All right. And I usually keep it about 60% because while the quality is lesser than, you know, something that's going for print, all right, if I were to print this at 60%, it's going to look like crap. But on the screen, nobody will ever notice that difference. Okay. So that kind of gives me a guarantee that if somebody decides to print it, it's going to look like shit. Okay. Excuse the language. All right. And the next one is the size. All right. So what size do I want to give it? All right. So in this case, you know, maybe I want the long edge to be 1200 pixels. Okay. Most screens are 1920 by 1080. So anything larger than 1920 by 1080 is going to be shrunk down to fit on your screen. So you don't really technically need anything bigger than that to showcase it on the internet. Okay. And most screens are either 72 or 96 DPI. All right. The only ones that are higher than that are cell phones and tablets. They tend to be at usually about 150 DPI or PPI, pixels per inch. Okay. But even that, you know, you're looking at it very, very small on a very, very small screen. So that's not that big of an issue. All right. I just don't need 3000 by 5000 pixel image going out for internet use because nobody's going to see it at that resolution. It's going to be shrunk down anyway. Okay. A little bit of output sharpening for the screen. Okay. It'll ask you, you know, what kind of metadata do you want preserved? I always suggest get rid of location information. You'll see there's a spot here that says remove location info. A lot of modern cameras, like cell phones and the modern mirrorless, have built-in GPS systems. All right. And a lot of people don't know this. It geotags where you took the photo. Okay. Now you might say, well, you know, I'm taking pictures of flowers in the park. Who cares? That's fine. But if you're taking pictures of your kids inside your house and you got your, you know, $2,000 television screen showing in the picture behind you, well, guess what? You're broadcasting to every crook where you live with that nice fancy television screen behind you. Okay. Or other valuables that you may not be aware. So be careful with that. Okay. That's just me being paranoid. All right. Do you want to add a watermark? All right. I usually say, you know, it's nice to advertise if you want to, promote your business, advertise your business right here visually, right on the front of your image. You can add a watermark. Okay. And then after the Lightroom does all this and it kicks out that file, what do you want it to do? And I usually say, show it to me in my Finder or my Explorer window, because usually my workflow extends beyond Lightroom. Okay. So once Lightroom kicks out this new file, this JPEG, I then now open up my browser, go to Facebook, and then because Lightroom has opened up my Finder window or my Explorer window, and it's pointing directly to that export file, I can then just click and drag and bring it into Facebook. So my workflow continues beyond Lightroom, and I have it set up so that Lightroom takes me that one step extra. Okay, so all of this can be done as an export persona or as an export preset. Okay, and just to take it a little bit further, what I've done is I've created different presets for different needs. Okay, so for all my event photography, I have a preset that processes my images for my events gallery on my website. Okay. My clients will get a different resolution. All right. And it puts it into a clients gallery folder. Okay. Social media. I have one for my social, everything that I post on Facebook. I have a preset specifically for that. So it'll apply all the changes that I just talked about. All right. And it'll put it into that very specific folder. All right. And I know that folder is anything in that folder is what I'm going to share on social media. All right. And like I said, my workflow goes beyond that. So when I'm in my browser, I'm on Facebook and I've moved the images and put them up on Facebook, I can now go to that specific folder, delete everything in that folder, and I don't have extra images hanging out, doing nothing on my computer, taking up space. All right. Now, a lot of people are kind of against that. They're saying, well, I don't like to delete, when I export something, I don't like deleting it. Okay. And my response is, why not? You have the source code, you have the base image. If you need to create a new image, just generate a new image. All right. Most often than not, when you generate a new image, it may need different parameters anyway. All right. So something that I share on Facebook is going to have a different parameter than that same image that I'm going to submit to a photography competition. All right. The photography competition does not want watermarks, and it needs to be a higher resolution so they can pixel peep. All right. So you're going to be generating new images anyway. All right. So why have two of the same image at two different resolutions just hanging out on your computer, doing nothing but taking up space in the event that you may need it later for some preconceived notion, all right? I say get rid of it. If you need a new one, just generate a new one. Okay, so hopefully that that gives you a little bit of an idea. So, okay. Were you able to install Lightroom Classic on your system, Gloria?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I have I couldn't download the pictures, but some, but no all those that I need.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
we'll tackle that. We'll take care of that. Okay. All right. So hopefully that answered some of your questions. I know for you, a lot of the stuff that I am going through here is a little bit above your pay grade. But like I said, just watch, because what is going to happen is eventually your skill level will get to a better position, and you're just going to be able to recall some of this and go, aha, that's how these two things fit together. All right. Because of what, you learn now, it will take effect later. So trust me on that. Okay. All right. Any other questions? No, we're good. All right. Next week is Photoshop. Photoshop has also done some upgrades, but nothing to really write home about, in my opinion. Again, they seem to be working more on the artificial intelligence end of it. But, nothing to really, create a new, a specific program around. So if there's anything that you want to tackle for next week, let me know ahead of time, and I'll make sure I prepare it. I do have some notes, and I can't remember. I don't even know where I put my notes. I'll have to find out. But if there's anything, like I said, specific that you want me to target for Photoshop next week, send it to me. Either through email or through Facebook messages, and I'll make sure to incorporate it. Okay. All righty, guys. I'm letting you know early about the photo walk. Okay. If you're interested in joining us, go ahead and mark this on your calendar. So that way, you don't double book yourself for that day. I know it's an inconvenient time, all right, but, we are in winter time where it's getting darker earlier, The weather right now has been gorgeous. I can't believe it's November and we have 70-degree weather. It's ridiculous. The rose bush that my wife planted in front of our house actually still has roses on it. This is nuts. Nuts. And of course, all the leaves and the trees in our neighborhood are just they're on the lawns now. But weather-wise, it's gorgeous. All right. So, you can still get out there in a light shirt or a light jacket and with your camera and really enjoy yourselves. So we'll see. Hopefully it stays that way to the end of the month. So keep that in mind, and hopefully we'll see you. Hopefully we'll see you next week, next Monday, for another edition of Learn Photography with Duck. And as always, I really, really, really do appreciate you guys. I can't say that enough. Okay.
Thank you, Doc.
All right.
Thank you.
Very, very informative tonight.
Awesome. That's what I like to hear, as long as we keep it informative. All right.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
For watching Learning Photography with Duck. Brought to you in association with Milford Photo, your local full-service camera store. Located in downtown Milford, Connecticut, Milford Photo offers you a personalized shopping experience. From the latest camera gear to printing and framing services. And, of course, educational workshops to teach you the finer aspects of photography. Don't forget to tell them Duck sent you.